Hello everyone, my name is the Ultimate Spy, and welcome to another episode of Reviewed number 170. And today, I'm going to be reviewing Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. So what did I think of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi? I liked it, despite what people said about it. I mean, it opened with 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's great. That's a really good film rating for a Star Wars film. There's a lot of backlash on this film, particularly just because of the people who had issues with the writing and everything. They said it was terrible. Like, I've seen a lot of comments on Episode 8 saying it's one of the worst Star Wars films, even worse than Episode 2. Mainly because of the writing, like saying that Last Jedi was garbage, it was trash, it's a sitting hot pile of shit. It's like opinions, but stupid opinions, because it's a Star Wars movie. There are bound to be issues with it. There's not a single movie in the Skywalker Saga that is perfect. All of them have some issues with them. I mean, I personally don't have any issues with it personally, but I know there's something out there that I've had a problem with. I mean, obviously the script is a big part of it, but with this one, I thoroughly enjoyed it the first time I saw it in theaters. It was a lot better than The Force Awakens for sure, just because of the story. I definitely thought there was a lot more going on in the story of this one. And also, it was directed by another person than J.J. Abrams. It was directed by Rian Johnson. And honestly, with the direction, I really don't see a difference, really. It really doesn't affect me, really. But still, this one was not my favorite. I will say, I think my favorite is definitely Episode 1, for sure. I mean, 2 and 3 were good too, but Episode 1 was probably my favorite Star Wars film of all time. And so with this one, yeah, there were issues. It's not my favorite of the two that they've made so far in the sequel trilogy. I'm not a fan of the sequel trilogy at all. I've just not really understood the story of what's really happening, of like how, like, especially when Episode 7 came out and the plot for that movie, I really didn't understand anything that was happening in terms of the story, in terms of the gap between Episodes 6 and 7. It didn't make any sense. Unless you read the books or you play the Lego Star Wars game, it doesn't make any sense. And I never did those things. Eventually I will, but not right now. And I did not like the fact that at the end of Episode 6, apparently there's a 30-year gap, and then the First Order comes from the ashes that was the Empire, and then the Resistance basically replaces the Rebels. It makes no sense, and I really didn't understand that. And the same thing with this one, it's like, there's not much difference, really. I mean, it takes place immediately after the end of Episode 7, which is great. I did notice that this one was a lot funnier. It was so much funnier than The Force Awakens, for sure. I thought that Episode 7 was a good start to a new trilogy, but Episode 8 was just great in terms of the humor. I mean, there were a lot of serious moments in the movie, definitely. Especially new characters that were introduced, like Rose, Vice Admiral Hodor, who's played by the brilliant Laura Bailey. Is that her name? Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. I think it's Laura Den I'm thinking of. She played Ellie Sattler in the Jurassic Park movies, or at least the first and the third movies. And, I mean, she's interesting. She's not my favorite character. I mean, I think that with each new movie, there's always going to be new characters. Like, with Episode 9, they're introducing new characters to the franchise. Like, every episode they do that. But this one was different. Definitely a lot different. I didn't have any issues with it. I mean, I did have some things that I didn't really understand, but that's not the same as actually having issues. A film can have issues, but it's not the same thing as not being able to understand certain aspects of the film. And with this episode, was amazing. I mean, I think that the marketing was just a bit meh. Porgs. Fucking porgs. Ugh. They were all over the place. I mean, first of all, what I did not like about this movie in terms of the release date was, well, that exact reason, the release date. It shouldn't have come out in December. Mainly because they finished filming about a year, actually I think it was around almost a year and a half before the film came out. I don't remember when it ended filming. I think it was like July or something of the next year. I think it was literally they finished filming in I think it was July of 2016. They finished filming, so I think they're kind of almost filming them back to back, but not exactly. They do have quite a gap of time, but with this one, it just is like so they finished filming, they edited it, completely edited it, and they finished it by September of the following year. That's like that's a year and 2 months. So they literally had 3 months to just let this film wait. Put the reels on the shelf and just wait for the film to be released for the premiere and then the actual release date. So they spent the next 3 months marketing it, and of course, porgs all over the place. Porgs were just part of like the Last Jedi campaign for marketing, and it's just like it wasn't. I wasn't a big fan of it, honestly. The porgs are funny, they're silly, they're all over the place. But my goodness, you have a film that has a December release, and then you literally just go, okay, well, film's done, visual effects done, everything's done. It's locked, it's completed, it's ready to be released. But it's like, oh wait, it doesn't come out in December or release date in December. You know what? Let's just hold on to it. Let's just put it on the shelf and just let it let it go to dust for a while. Just put it on the shelf, leave it alone for a while, and then we can spend. Oh wait, it's September now. That's 3 months we can market it, right? It's like, ugh. Yeah, one of the problems I had with this film was well, no, in terms of production, not the actual film itself, but the production was that wait time. It's like you finish the film, 3 months before it is supposed to release. Why don't you just push it to like October or something? It's just like the film's done, release it. Don't wait, okay? I mean, I can understand like premieres. If the film is done, they can. There's like maybe a month before you release it. You have to want to take time to load onto tracks or whatever you need to do, or make sure everything's good to go. Last minute changes, that kind of stuff. But like they literally waited 3 months to release the movie. It's the worst decision ever. I mean, I've never been more like annoyed with a movie. I mean, I didn't hate Episode 8, not at all. It's just I wasn't a fan of the production status, like the how the film was completed and then it like just sat waiting for the film to release. Like, you don't do that. I mean, The Force Awakens didn't take on that long to film, and then there was to edit. I mean, I think it was less time. And then Episode 9, they started filming that in what August 1st to February 12th, I think it was, something like that. I can't remember exactly the day it was. Something like that. It was about 6 months of filming. That's longer than it took for the Episode 8 to film. And then you give it another, I think it's like, 9 months to, or no, is it, they're ready to, so yeah, that's like 10 months of post-production. That's less time it took to edit Episode 8. That's just ridiculous. Like, I mean, I don't understand what I mean, I guess based off of how long the movie is, or the story, or whatever, the script. Some movies in a trilogy take longer than others in a trilogy to make, and then edit and everything. I didn't understand that, but that's basically my 2 cents on, the production problems that I had, at least. I mean, I don't really understand why they did it. It's just like a stupid thing to do, but, they did it. It wasn't the way I would have done it if I was to make a movie like this. But one of the things in this movie that I noticed was missing, sort of. Well, some people thought it was missing, but it was just like they didn't use actual words. They just kind of like used beeps and everything. So one of the most famous lines in Star Wars, and any Star Wars movie, I don't even know if it was in the Rogue One or Solo. I think in Solo it was "I have a good feeling about this." But it's like every Star Wars movie, doesn't matter if it's an episode or not. I'm pretty sure. I've got a bad feeling about this every episode. And this one, it wasn't said by a human. There's always someone who says it, but it never was actually said in this movie as a line. But it was said, just not as, language. BB-8 is the one who said it. Now, when you hear it, it's mainly just like him beeping beeps, and then Poe responds. And the way he's responding, it kind of makes the idea that BB-8 actually said, "I have a bad feeling about this." So people always like, "Oh wait, no one said I have a bad feeling about this," and in this episode, well, not true. You just didn't hear it as English. So it wasn't the movie. You probably have to put subtitles on to really see it, but apparently yes, BB-8 did say, "I have a bad feeling about this." I mean, yeah, the first time not that a human hasn't said it before, but still, I was a bit disappointed they didn't actually have someone say it, as a line, but at least someone said it, and at least we get the idea of of who said it, even if we can't understand what they're saying. But still, that's just one thing they cut as a tradition. I mean, they still had it in the movie, it just wasn't traditional. So now, one of the things that I wasn't the biggest fan of, although they were cute, yes, but I wasn't the biggest fan of them as a whole, was the porks. They were marketed a lot, a lot, but they were just like silly a little bit, and they were kind of all over the place, especially with Chewie. Like, Chewie was so funny in this movie because the porks were everywhere. They even wandered aboard the Falcon and started making their home in the Falcon, and stripping a chair off, and then getting all over the controls in the cockpit. And then Chewie is just so annoyed. And then when Chewie's, I think earlier when they're about to take off, Chewie makes himself some kind of roast or something like that, like some food, and he's about to eat it, and then porgs are just looking give us some. Chewie's like, no way, and then a little porg is like, oh, give me some. He's like, no. And then later on, of course, the porgs are all over the cockpit, and Chewie's not having it. So midway through the episode, Chewie just pushes one to the side, yeah, you get him, Chewie. That was great. Yeah, Chewie was really fun on this. It's probably one of my favorite characters. Not my favorite character, but one of my favorite alien characters, because Chewie is not human, obviously. But yeah, he is so funny in this. Now, one of the many things that people had issues with was Leia using the Force being ridiculous. And they may have heard part 3 of the Star Wars trilogy that I did for the Madhouse with my podcast, and Big Dino Guy, my friend, he pointed out some of the issues I had, because he did that, and I wasn't stopping him, but at the same time, I really, he has an opinion, really, not an unpopular opinion, but an opinion of that. The fact that Leia using the Force is ridiculous. It's not in my book, at least. I don't think that people were complaining about how terrible that is, how awful that is, in terms of direction, it's so bad that why would Leia do that? She can't do that. Well, technically she can do that. If you remember in the trailer for Episode 7, Luke says, the Force is strong in my family. My father has it, my sister has it. I think that's how it is. I can't remember exactly what it said, but the main point is my sister has it. So Leia does have the Force, but we don't really see her use it. She's not a Jedi, obviously. I think she does become a Jedi in the non-canon books. Who cares anymore? That's when Disney bought them and it made everything worse. Not for the movie, just for the expanded material. I have nothing against Star Wars Disney movies. I'm just not really a big fan of the whole canonicity thing. In some of the non-canon books, Leia does become a Jedi. She even was a lightsaber. And so in this movie, it's revealed that she actually has the Force. She's not like a Jedi or anything, but she does have the Force. And there's a scene where one of the main ships that she's on, with everyone else, including Admiral Akbar, gets blown out, and so she is in space. She could be dying or whatever. And she uses the Force to get back, and she's just pulling herself forward. And people thought that was ridiculous. People thought it was oh, that's so terrible. Why would they do that? And it's well, if Luke said in the trailer for Episode 7 that the Force is strong with his family, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's Jedi suddenly. It just means that his family, the Force is strong with him and his family, and so. It's unusual, and it's the very first time I've seen Leia use the Force, but she still used it, and it just means that she's strong with the Force. That's all it is. Nothing ridiculous about it. It just means that Leia has the Force inside her. She just doesn't really use it a whole lot. I know it was the first time she used it, but it's it's not ridiculous. It's not terrible. No, it's not bad at all. I really like that. I think that was a really clever way of showing off that Leia does have Force inside her. It's just not really something we see a lot, or at all. If that's the first time we see it, and it's actually really cool. I like that a lot. It was actually really surprising. And actually, speaking of the Episode 7 trailer, in terms of the scenes we saw, they were kind of teasing Episode 8, actually. I didn't even realize that when I saw the first trailer for Episode 7, but when Luke is putting his hand on R2-D2, there's some lighting or some fire. That's actually from a scene in Episode 8. They kind of foreshadow what was going to happen in Episode 8. There's a flashback of Luke, and that scene from Episode 7 is actually during the flashback where Luke talks about, training a new generation of Jedi. It was alluded to a lot by Han especially, but in this episode, that was the first time we've seen a foreshadowed episode. especially since we see him putting his mechanical hand, or his robotic hand on R2D2, and then we see it later on in the episode 8 flashback, we see him actually do that, actually, like, look up and see what Ben has done, destroy the temple, essentially, which is powerful, but that was something that I didn't really think about before. And speaking of which, with that flashback, in this episode we got a lot of backstory for what happened between episode 6 and 7. I mean, a little bit, not like a whole lot, but we got a little bit of context about, what Luke was up to and why he wants the Jedi to end and why he doesn't want to be another generation of Jedis, because Ben had darkness inside of him and Luke became a different person. I mean, people had a lot of issues with this movie in terms of the writing. They didn't like how Luke was written, like all that. Luke's not supposed to be like that, or whatever. But it's like, you gotta understand that it had been 30 years for the character. 30 years since the end of episode 6 and the beginning of episode 7 and also 8 and this entire new trilogy. Luke is gonna have changed by then. He's gonna have a completely different, personality maybe, because he's gotten a lot older. So you can't expect him to be the same person he was. Age does that to you, especially 30 years of age. 30 years of age really can do a number on someone and make them do things different in life, in later life. So what Luke did, training a new generation of Jedi, which is amazing, but also like, trying to get the darkness out of him, and not wanting to do anything with the Force. That isn't bad writing, at least in my opinion. It just means that Luke is a different person now because it's been 30 years and there's a lot that's been happening since then, and so he's decided that decided that this one thing that happened, he doesn't want to do it again because he knows it's going to end no differently than it did before. So I wasn't against the writing of Luke. I wasn't really against that at all. I think it was interesting. I just like it was a new approach on the character. It was I think when an actor comes back to play the character, kind of like for Chris Hemsworth with Thor, he got tired of playing the character after Age of Ultron and he wanted to do it again, but he wanted to try something different. So with Thor Ragnarok, he said that exact thing. And so with the same thing with Luke from Mark Hamill, I think he wanted to try a different approach on Luke. He understood that it had been 30 years for the character, and so what has changed in 30 years for Luke? He may not be the same person. I mean, he's the same character, but he may have changed a lot, and so I feel that's probably why people were upset about that, because they aren't accepting the change. Like, some people don't really accept change with characters, and so with Luke, he changed a lot in 30 years, so expect him to be different now. He's still a Jedi Master, but like, he's gonna make choices that he doesn't normally do, maybe 30 years ago. Because 30 years ago, he was a completely different man, and obviously 30 years is a long time, so of course he's going to be a different person. So I don't think that the writing was bad with this. I just, in my opinion only, that he just changed a lot. He's just a different person. He makes different decisions and different choices in his life, especially as a Jedi Master. And so I definitely think that that wasn't terrible. That wasn't bad at all. I thought that was interesting, especially seeing more backstory about what happened, and especially him training a new generation of Jedi, like taking a dozen students, starting a training temple. Ben Solo's one of them. Eventually, Snoke's new Sith guy. I don't really know much about him. I think a lot of people don't really know much about Snoke, but having him be able to like corrupt Ben to turn him to the dark side, to sort of become the new Vader, essentially, is powerful stuff. And we didn't really get to see a lot of the training stuff, but we got to see the temple and all that stuff, and seeing Luke with his green lightsaber again. He looks. I think that the flashback Luke. I mean, obviously different outfit, but he looks, a bit older than he did in episode 6. Obviously, I think at that point, I don't know the time frame between that flashback and what he looks like now. He has longer hair and his beard is longer and grayer. I don't know what the timeline of that is. It might have been like 10 years before. I don't know, but I never thought that was a terrible idea. I never thought that writing was bad. It's actually a surprising move. I never thought we could see more of the Jedi stuff. That was really cool. I mean, we didn't really get to see any Jedi, but like, it's still cool stuff. I really enjoyed that. And one of the things that I liked a lot was when Luke entered the Falcon for the first time, that it's actually the first time Mark Hamill has been inside the Millennium Falcon in literally 30 years. So Luke's reaction to stepping inside the Falcon for the first time is actually Mark Hamill's reaction too. Like, seeing it for the first time in 30 years, that was his reaction. and it's obviously unbelievable. Like, he couldn't believe that he was inside the Falcon again, especially the cockpit, because it's been literally 30 years since he was inside there. I mean, technically episode 4 was the last one he had, like, the last time he ever went to the Falcon. I don't know exactly how it works, but still, it was truly incredible to see him kind of react, like, oh my god, it's been so long since I've been here. So, I mean, again, 30 years is a long time, so you expect people to have that reaction. Now, there were a couple of big surprises in this episode, but one of them was when Luke returns to the Falcon for the first time, meets R2-D2 again for the first time in 30 years, and then, he says, like, oh, nothing will convince me to come back. And then R2-D2 does the most surprising thing ever and plays the recording of young Leia talking about, the Clone Wars and all that stuff, and basically the only hope kind of thing. The thing from episode 4. That was surprising. I never thought that would actually be a thing that they would actually put in the movie. And that was, like, it was amazing. I mean, also really, really amazing to see a young Leia again. But, it was a cool little nod to episode 4 in a way, which is fantastic. The other surprise, however, was Yoda coming back. That was awesome. Like, I never expected that was going to happen. I was shocked. I'm like, oh my god, they brought back Yoda. I mean, what's really, really cool about this was it was the original puppet from episode 5. I think it might have been a different mold because he doesn't look exactly the same as episode 5 Yoda because of the puppet they used, but it was the same. I think it was the same idea. I think they might have used a different model, but it was the same type of thing. I can't remember. I don't know exactly how that works, but still, I loved seeing that. Seeing Ghost Yoda again was fantastic. I definitely feel like the ghost effect was a bit different this time, but at the same time, it was just fantastic to see him. Obviously Frank Oz came back to voice the character again, but just seeing him, I think the reason that they put Yoda here in the first place is because they wanted to give Luke some hope because he didn't want anything to do with the Jedi. Like he was this old Jedi master who had really kind of left the world. He doesn't really want anything to do with the Force anymore. And then Yoda comes back and it's just like a whole different story. And it's so amazing to see Yoda interact with Luke after 30 years. Quite literally, because last time we saw him, well, he died at the end of episode 6. So that's kind of like a surprise for you. But still, I really enjoyed that. That was like the biggest surprise ever. I loved it. Just seeing Yoda again was amazing. And the reason why they used a puppet, because they kind of wanted to bring back something from the original trilogy, because the CGI Yoda we see in the prequel trilogy is supposed to be a lot younger. That's why he's able to fight and everything. It's because he's a lot younger. And to be honest, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, so people probably might agree with me on this. I prefer CGI Yoda. I mean, seriously, I do. I mean, first of all, he's supposed to be a lot younger. That's why they use CGI in the first place, because it really wouldn't have worked for a puppet to fight. It wouldn't have looked good. Which is interesting because for the episode 1 release, they used a CGI model over the terrifying puppet Yoda they used for episode 1. That was just ugh. But yeah, I honestly prefer the CGI version of Yoda a lot more because, well, I definitely feel like he's more expressive. Not only that, but being younger and just being more wise. I feel like compared to a puppet Yoda where he doesn't fight anymore because he's a lot older. But still, that was a fantastic cameo. It was just wonderful. One of the things that I didn't understand, I mean, there are a couple of things I didn't understand, but one of the biggest things was how Luke knew who Sidious was. Because when Luke is talking about, the temple and all that stuff, and the backstory we get for him training a new generation of Jedi, he mentions the Emperor. He mentions Darth Sidious by name. And I'm thinking, like, he knows the Emperor, but he doesn't know his real name. He doesn't know his Sith name. So how can he remember that? I mean, it's like, how can he know Darth Sidious's name and know he created the Empire? And I just don't understand that. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. He didn't get that backstory in episode 6. It doesn't make sense. I don't really understand that. I mean, maybe it was the writing for that, but it's like, suddenly he just knows who Darth Sidious is, huh? Okay. Whatever. I don't really get it, but okay. Apparently he knows everything now. It was just, yeah, I didn't get that part. Now, one of the things that I was really interested in in terms of, how the Force was working was, and it was very mysterious how it was working in the first place, was that Kylo Ren and Rey were connected. Like, they kept seeing each other in, like, Force connections or whatever. Turns out, obviously, Snoke was behind it all because he was making them connect so he could really see who Rey was and figure out who she is, because obviously, as it's revealed, Rey is nobody. Her parents are nobody, drunk hitters, sold her for drinking money, all that stuff, and it's terrible stuff. But what's really interesting is their connection. Like, they're connected physically to the Force. It's really interesting. I don't even know how it's done, but still, I enjoy that because again, Snoke is making that happen in the first place. But at the same time, it's just a really clever way of doing that. Like, just really to show them that they are connected in more ways than you think, which is just interesting, just so fascinating. Now, one of the things that a lot of people will actually notice about Episode 8 was the fact that it combined elements from Episode 5 and 6. I mean, Episode 5, mainly because of, Rey going to Act 2 and training with Luke. The exact same thing with Luke training on Dagobah. And then obviously the cave thing, that was just weird. I don't even know what that was about. It was weird. I mean, it wasn't terrible. It was just odd, I didn't really understand what that was about. I don't even know. I think it was meant to kind of show, like, oh, maybe Rey can figure out more about herself, like, find out, more about herself. Like, trying to figure out who her parents are, obviously, is one of the big things. But, like, trying to figure out who she is in this story, in this world, in this galaxy. She doesn't really know who she is in this world. It's so mysterious. But, also, like, for Episode 6, the chamber room with Snoke, that was a lot like Episode 6, a lot. I mean, again, a lot of it definitely felt like Episode 5, but also 6 combined. It was like the two of them combined into one story. It was amazing. I mean, in terms of the elements, it wasn't like a direct copy of that. It just went in terms of the elements, in terms of the inspiration. It definitely felt like it took a lot of inspiration from Episode 5 and 6, which is obvious. But I definitely felt like the final battle was a little anticlimactic because we have Snoke who just dies like that, just like out of nowhere. Like, you don't even get to really know who he is. We don't even know the answer to who he is. Turns out Kylo Ren kills him. I mean, he blames Rey, but it's honestly him. He just uses the Force to kill him via Anakin's lightsaber. And I just felt like the battle after after Snoke's eyes, it's like that. First of all, it was quick. It just felt like, oh, that didn't last long. And then obviously when they were fighting the guards, it's like no lightsaber fight. It's like, okay, fine, be that way. It was the first Star Wars movie without a real lightsaber battle. I don't really count the climax between Force Projection Luke and Kylo Ren. That doesn't really count. I'll get to that later. Yeah, I just was a bit disappointed with that final battle. I mean, it was cool, but it's like, it just isn't the same, It just isn't as climactic. And obviously, Snoke dying, which is like, what the hell? It's so fast. Like, okay, there you go. That was interesting, but yeah, I didn't get that. That was just weird. First of all, Rey and Ben teaming up. What happened there? Wait, what? I thought Ben was evil. I thought Ben was on the dark side of the Force, not the white side. It's like, I don't really understand. It's like, suddenly they're teaming up. It's like, suddenly it's like, well, maybe the idea is that Ben actually has some light in him. Maybe the idea is that Ben might turn back to the light side of the Force. It's possible. We don't know yet. I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping that'll happen. It just makes a lot of sense for that to happen because, he's supposed to be the new Darth Vader, so, like, Darth Vader was actually able to turn back to the light side before he died. That kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really understand that. He's the dark side. Why would he team up with Rey to fight the guards? It's like, come on. Now, one of the things that I really didn't understand about the final battle, like the final battle between Ben, Kylo Ren, and Luke, was, first of all, Luke's force projecting himself to the battlefield as his younger self, his younger self from the flashbacks. And he's not carrying his green lightsaber. He's carrying Anakin's lightsaber. I know I keep calling it that, but that's because it's actually Anakin's lightsaber. People may call it Luke's lightsaber, but that's Anakin's lightsaber. He's carrying Anakin's lightsaber. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. In the flashbacks, it showed that he has his green lightsaber. And then obviously he just rejects, Anakin's lightsaber. It's like, what the hell? I mean, first of all, it didn't really feel like a real lightsaber battle. It just did not. It was just not the same, because obviously he's a Force protection, so he can't really fight him. But like, ugh, it's just like, it's not the same. I didn't hate it. It just wasn't the same as ones I've seen in the past. It wasn't as climactic. There wasn't really any blades clashing at all, so it didn't feel like a real lightsaber battle. But still, I definitely felt like the way Luke was written was definitely interesting, especially that final battle where he's where he's saying he won't be the last Jedi because Rey will be the last Jedi. Well, she will. I mean, she's not a Jedi yet, but like she's simply Force sensitive. But at the same time, she could be. She could be really the beginning of a new generation of Jedi, especially since she took the text from the tree before it caught on fire. That's important, you know. That's to know that the Jedi will live on in Rey, especially since the Episode 9 trailer kind of implied that, like, you know, 1,000 generations live on you. Makes perfect sense because she has a Jedi text. You can learn how to become a Jedi and then also create a new generation of Jedi. Hopefully, that's the idea. But still, I definitely feel like that final battle just wasn't really much of a battle, really. So, now one of the things that was rather silly about Luke was calling a lightsaber a laser sword. Now, Jedi never call it that. They always call it a lightsaber. I think in the earlier stories, like in the Tales of the Jedi series, they were called Force sabers, and then later they were just called lightsabers. But he calls it a laser sword. Now, that's only the second time that a character from Star Wars actually called it a laser sword, because Anakin from Episode 1 calls it a laser sword. Now, that's pretty uncommon. You don't really hear that a lot. You don't really hear that at all. You know, I don't even know that was a battle. I don't even know why you call it a laser sword. It didn't really make any sense. But like, I don't know. I think that Luke just doesn't really want to have anything to do with the Jedi or anything like that. He's just kind of like, you know, I think he's probably just lazy. He's like, laser sword. And that's what they technically are. They are laser instead of sword. That's pretty much what they are. But at the same time, it was just like, it was weird. I guess it was a kind of a cool little Easter egg callback to Episode 1. When little Anakin calls it a laser sword, that was like, okay, well, that's a cool little non-Episode 1. Still, doesn't really make sense. It's not a laser sword, it's a lightsaber. So you get it right. Now, one of the reasons why Luke dies in the first place is because when he projects himself out to the battlefield, I didn't expect that at all, obviously, but he becomes exhausted. Like, it's physically exhausting for him to protect himself all the way out to there, like whole other planet. I mean, he's literally on another planet where he's protecting himself from. So of course it's going to be way too much for him. So like, you know, he's using the Force to do this incredible thing, something he never thought he could do. Especially since you know, it's not a Force power we've ever seen before. But like, it's just incredible that he can actually do that. And of course, yeah, he's going to die. He's gonna pass on to the Force. He's gonna be one with the Force, and that's just like, it's an incredible moment for Luke. I mean, it is a bit disappointing that Luke isn't the same character he was, but at the same time, the way he dies is peaceful. I think that, you know, what he does is incredible. The reason he dies is good too. You know, it makes perfect sense, and you know, that's just the way it is sometimes. But I definitely feel like that was the good reason why he did it. He had to pass on as the last Jedi, even though Rey is technically the last Jedi. Still, I definitely feel like that was a problem because when I was in the theater, I was like, oh my god, he's gone. Like, I didn't expect that. Like, you see movies nowadays, you don't really expect that at all. It's like, these kind of things that happen in these movies, you don't expect it at all. It's like, wow, who knew that could happen? But still, that was a really powerful moment. I really enjoyed that. But that's pretty much all I can say about Episode 8. But I did enjoy it a lot more than I did enjoy The Force Awakens. I felt like Episode 7 was fantastic, but it just wasn't as good as, say, the prequel trilogy. I definitely think the prequel trilogy is a lot better because, well, mainly because it's about the Jedi. You know, it's about where they came from. You know, about who they are, and obviously it's like the start of the Skywalker Saga story about, you know, where did Anakin come from? Oh, he's a slave, that kind of thing. So that's why I love the prequel trilogy a lot more. And I don't know what's going to happen with Episode 9 in terms of Leia, in terms of Luke even. I don't even know what's going to happen. If Kylo Ren's going to turn back to the light side, I don't even know what's going to happen. I really hope that they figure out Carrie Fisher's footage. I hope they were able to... I hope they surprise me with the footage they were able to use. And really able to have Leia in the episode within the story they've made. That's what their idea is. But yeah, that's basically all I can say about Last Jedi. It's not as bad as people think. It really... I mean, what makes no sense is people who hate it. There's no reason to hate it. It's got 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. How can you factor that? How can you hate a movie that has 91%? It's like... It is not perfect. It's far from perfect. But it's not the worst Star Wars movie ever. Like some people claim. I mean, what's really sad about Episode 8 was the boycotting of God, you know, the fact that Kelly Marie Tran, who plays Rose, fantastic character, by the way, I just loved her. She was really fun. The fact that she had to delete her Instagram, just like Daisy really had to do, just because of some of the hate it got. It's like, come on. It's a Star Wars movie. It's... Although one thing I really, now that I think about it, I didn't think about this before actually. C-3PO was missing his right arm. Okay, I guess he gets his old arm back. Okay, weird. He didn't have as big a role, but he's still, he's still a fun part of the movie, and I love seeing Leia and Luke interact. Even though Luke was projection, it was still wonderful because literally they hadn't interacted in 30 years. So that was like amazing, especially since Lando's coming back in the next episode. That's gonna be wonderful. So I don't know what I'm expecting for the rest of Skywalker. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm excited for it. It's gonna be great because Palpatine's come back. I don't know how that's gonna work, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. So that's gonna do for this episode reviewed. I'm gonna give this movie a 9 out of 10, and that's mainly because of the things that I didn't understand about what was happening. Phasma finally dies, which is great. I don't know. I thought that she had gone apparently, but no, she's back. But that's pretty much the only reason I'm giving it 9 out of 10. That's a pretty good score. I'm not gonna get a perfect score because it wasn't a perfect film, but still it deserves a lot more than it gets. Especially since a lot of people hate it, which is so sad. I mean, just so sad. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Reviewed. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button. I really do appreciate it. And if you are new to this channel, subscribe for more episodes of this series and other series that I do, as well as other good content. Also make sure to hit that bell to enable alerts to uploads and I'll be back next week with another episode. Right?